As gamers, we've all had the chance to pick up and play a first-person shooter, but there's one shooter that comes to mind that is like no other. Those, of course, are the role-playing shooter Borderlands games. With multiple weapon slots, skill powers, energy shields, and their unique comic-like design, the Borderlands games will have you yelling, screaming, and even laughing. The third installment of the game is coming out very soon, and surprisingly, it ain't called Borderlands 3. Instead, we get Borderlands the Pre-Sequel. Now, Borderlands the Pre-Sequel is being developed by both 2K and Gearbox Software. And guess what? Here to talk all things Borderlands are Tony Lawrence, the studio head at 2K Australia, and Matt Armstrong, the franchise director of Borderlands at Gearbox Software. So you know they both know what the hell they're talking about. Tony, Matt, welcome, and thanks for joining us today. And I know you guys are really busy with the final preparations of the game, so thank you for taking the time.
Good to be here. David. Good to be here.
In a nutshell, what is the plot of Borderlands the Pre-Sequel?
Well, I guess the game, no worries. The game is set between Borderlands and Borderlands 2. There's I guess a 5-year Pandoran time frame between those two titles. And we wanted to look at some of the things that were happening, because if you look in the sky in Borderlands 2, it's quite different to the one you see in Borderlands. So what we came down to is we wanted to do a few things that were different and support that. The first thing being we wanted to set a story on the moon to match some of the changes there. And we were really interested in telling the story of Handsome Jack, particularly as it fit really well as a prequel to Borderlands 2, and the way he was, the maniacal guy who likes to, eat eyes with a spoon, and see how he got to be that person. So essentially the plot is about what happened to Handsome Jack to become a Hyperion manager into the CEO of Hyperion, and how he came from someone who would, show himself always as a hero, into the lovable villain that he is in Borderlands 2.
And you guys are sharing the development of the game. There had to have been some issues or challenges. Were there any?
Well, the biggest challenge with working with Australia versus Dallas is when it's 9 o'clock in the morning there, it's 6 p.m. here. So meetings are kind of tricky. We have to teleconference, and we stay a little bit late, and they get in a little bit early. That's actually the biggest concern is just simply talking to each other can be very, very tricky. Now, the good news is if we're both working on the same piece of code or file, when I'm working on it, they're asleep, and when they're working on it, I'm asleep, so at least we don't have conflict there.
And I guess it's a little surprising to come in the next day and find out what Gearbox has been working on, and saying, oh, wow, that looks really cool. That's a good way to start the day.
Now, don't you think the pre-sequel is a bit of a hard sell, especially since the second one is out? Well, we know what happens in the second Borderlands. I'm not going to spoil anything for people who haven't played it. But don't you think it's a bit of a hard sell, or no?
Well, not particularly. I mean, what I see in Borderlands the Pre-Sequel is it remains, it has the core Borderlands style and gameplay. It still has the really great fun co-op shoot and loot gameplay. And we've added a few really, really nice twists to it. I guess the biggest one is the low-gravity gameplay, where we're able to jump really, really high and take the combat to the air. So that's something new and fun that we believe that players will really enjoy.
Oh, we've added a huge number of things to the game, actually. Borderlands has always been a really fun game, but it's always been a very story-driven game about these characters. Mm-hmm. And we're showing a new side to the characters and telling some really cool stories with the characters that a lot of players wanted to see and haven't seen before. And generally, our fans are really loyal. They really get excited about the next Borderlands game, so they're gonna jump on board really fast. We're gonna get to the moon. We're gonna have low gravity, new enemies, new monsters, a new villain with a new thing to do. We'll get to see a new side of Handsome Jack, who's a fantastic character. Mm-hmm. Back when he was just Jack, before he becomes this megalomaniacal villain. We're gonna have 4 new player characters with all kinds of cool action skills. We have Athena, who's a gladiator. She's got a shield that absorbs all damage coming at her and throws and reflects off and explodes. We have Nisha, who's just this wicked, bad cowgirl. She's just an evil, nasty girl. She's great, and she can gun down everybody in just a few seconds with her skill. Wilhelm's a mercenary who summons 2 robots that fly around and attack the enemies and support him. And then we have Claptrap, who was our sort of goofy sidekick robot, but has been modified to be a combat robot in this one, but he's just not very good at it. He's kind of a big screw-up still. His action skill, whenever you need it, he analyzes the battlefield and attempts to emulate another Vault Hunter which is what we call our heroes.
Mm-hmm.
And often he does a good job, but sometimes, you know, he kind of messes up and does something really silly, like put a big rubber ducky around himself and start jumping up and down uncontrollably. He's a little bit of a loose cannon in the battlefield of chaos.
I imagine Claptrap would probably do that when you have a big boss fight.
Well, the thing is, what we found is we set it up so that it's not random. He doesn't. He's got a staggering number of possibilities. Players have seen some of them in some of our preview videos, but it's procedural. We actually do have him analyze the battlefield and choose what he thinks is appropriate. Now, sometimes he chooses poorly. Sometimes in a boss fight, you will have people bouncing around. But more frequently in a boss fight, he'll turn into a pirate ship and launch, you know, incredibly powerful cannonballs,
Awesome.
the 1812 Overture, or do something else really dramatically powerful that's effective. Really good players who've been testing the game have figured out how to manipulate the combat environment to trigger the powers that they want at the time. So there is something you can learn. You can learn how to sort of take advantage of his capabilities.
And even beyond that, he's whatever action skill that's suddenly activated, if the player thinks really is quick enough, they'll be able to use that very, very effectively, no matter what it is. If it's a rubber ducky jumping up and down, that's a huge opportunity to use the slam and inflict a heap of damage. So it's always a positive if you play the game right.
Awesome. Now, how is the skill tree different in this game compared to the others?
The skill tree's fairly similar to Borderlands 2. Borderlands 2 was sort of an evolution of Borderlands 1. We have some really, really dramatic skills you can buy. As you level up the game and you get more and better loot and stuff, you get some experience from combat missions, and you can unlock new abilities. But each one of the three skill trees the character has a mid-tier skill that radically changes their gameplay, and then a top-tier skill that changes it even more, so that if you're playing if you're playing as Athena and I'm playing as Athena, we can actually have very, very different experiences. But we've continued to evolve the trees. We have some skill trees that are really changed the gameplay even more. We like to play with that. Athena has a tree that's called Saronic Storm. That's all about lightning and fire damage. And the thing is, when you go down that skill tree, she becomes much more of a long-range, jumping through the air, low gravity, flying through the air combat kind of person. She's constantly moving and constantly jumping. But if you go down her Phalanx skill tree, which is all about her shield, suddenly your combat is on the ground and as close as you can. We really strive to make sure that every single skill point you spend changes the gameplay experience for you. It's not just a stronger gun or a stronger jump. It's much more deep than that.
Yeah, I guess to add to that, really, we've done skill trees that will allow the players to be able to choose a style of play that most suits them. And beyond that, we did make one change in the skill trees in that we're allowing people to get into them a little bit earlier. So rather than using level 5 from Borderlands 2, we're allowing them to get into them from about level 3.
Sounds great. I've read a couple articles, and then there's rumors that there's something involving butt smashing. What is that about?
That is so much fun. Essentially, it's jumping high in the air and slamming really hard on the ground. And depending on what odds kit you're equipped with, you're able to inflict different kinds of elemental damage as well. So it's a new way of, I guess, melee to some point. But it's just really fun in that you can jump high from a jump pad or in low gravity, then smash your enemy, and in some cases set them on fire, freeze them with ice, have them with corrosive damage all over the place. It's really a really fun mechanic.
Which one of you guys came up with that?
I have no idea. When we started this project, what we did was myself and about a dozen other guys from Gearbox flew down to Australia and just camped in their offices for 2 or 3 weeks.
Awesome.
And we went through every aspect of the game, the design, what is the moon, what are the promises of the moon, who are the characters, what are they going to be. It was really Gearbox and 2K Australia working together. It's very tricky for me to know who came up with any specific thing because it was such a collaborative process. It was a really enjoyable thing to do. I hope we can do it again sometime on something.
Well, it was really cool. I mean, several ideas that we had, we probably had simultaneously to the point where Matt and Matt Pierce from Gearbox would say, this would be really cool if we could do this, and 2K Australia had already implemented it the day before, or we do the same thing. We think it'd be really cool if we could put this in the game, and then find Gearbox had done it overnight.
Now, the multiplayer has been a big deal in these games. How are you guys improving that with the pre-sequel?
I guess the multiplayer is really, really important. I mean, the co-op gameplay is something that Borderlands has always done really, really well, and I think we've done that some justice here. What I guess the bigger difference for us in Borderlands Pre-Sequel is how we've managed the skill trees to affect the co-op play. So essentially, you'll find the skill trees will reflect to some extent your co-op players as well. Like, to give you an example, that we're talking about Claptrap before. His skills have a tendency to affect co-op players as well. So he might get a gunzerker, which means all of a sudden all co-op players will start shooting, dual-wielding their guns uncontrollably. Or the rubber ducky skill, where all players will start jumping up and down uncontrollably. So, I guess we've made some improvements there, and we really think they're fun.
No, I'm going down the same path. One of the biggest things we did, we have from the very start on Borderlands supported split-screen co-op on consoles. So you can sit on the couch next to your friend and pick up the game. You can drop in and drop out. We have 4-player co-op always from the very start. And we've gone a little bit further down that path this time. Claptrap has a skill tree that is so heavily dedicated to co-op that I'd imagine single-player players won't even go down that skill tree. We really, really, really want the characters to feed off of each other in interesting and entertaining ways. And we've done some things that are really cool. Athena has her shield. Anytime the shield takes damage, when she throws it, it explodes, doing double the damage of sword. Well, there's a skill you can buy that lets you take damage from friendly players. So she pulls up her shield, all the other guys on the team unload their guns into her shield, she throws it, it'll take out bosses in a single hit. It's overpowered and broken, but it requires really strong teamwork to pull that off. So we'll support the overpowered broken gameplay if it requires teamwork.
Now, will there be any DLC for this game?
Yeah, I guess we've just announced a season pass, and I guess we haven't spoken too much about it, but with the pre-orders, you're looking at the Shock Drop Slaughter Pit, which is a slaughter pit for the game. And, as Randy talked about previously, we're looking at maybe doing the character of a doppelganger for Handsome Jack.
Great. Now, are there any plans to release it on next-gen consoles?
I really think we're going to finish it on these consoles first, David. I guess, as soon as we've done that and we're looking at the DLC that we need to develop, that's something on my horizon at the moment.
Okay. Now, is there any chance of a demo so we can try it out before we pick it up?
Borderlands is a rough game to do demos for. We tried to put together a demo for Borderlands 1, and after several weeks of trying to figure out how to do it, we kind of gave up. We open up the world really, really fast. And also the other thing is we found that our players, the longer they play, the more they like the game, because we have to get through, there's a bit of a tutorial, a little bit of training. We've actually made it much shorter this time than the previous games. We get through that training really quickly. We unlock your action skill at 3. But we sort of ramp into the game. And it was really, really hard for us to figure out how, with a game that gets this open and you can go in all sorts of different directions, do all sorts of quests, how do you make a demo? The best thing I could recommend for a demo is you can actually go out and buy Borderlands 2 on Steam really cheap.
Yep.
Borrow it, sit down with a friend who has it. He has split screen whether he knows it or not. Play the previous games. It's the same flavor, and if you enjoy a Borderlands game previously, you're going to like this one a lot.
Now, where and when can we pick this game up?
Well, I guess we're releasing the game on October 14th in the US and North America. So I guess you'll be able to pick it up from stores, from Steam, from other outlets from around that time.
Okay, sounds great. I can't wait for it. Now, final question. Will we get to see Handsome Jack's Diamond Pony Butt Stallion?
This is in the canon pre-Butt Stallion. Butt Stallion was brand new at the start of Borderlands 2, which is a couple of years after this. He'd just now gotten Butt Stallion. There may be hints to the potential future of Butt Stallion, but Butt Stallion himself will sadly not appear. Even though Tiny Tina's still a few years away from existing, when you get to play through 2, she shows up and starts providing some voiceover commentary on her views on the proceedings. And that's kind of amusing.
Final thoughts. Convince us why we should pick this game up.
I guess because it's so much fun to play, David. I mean, with playing Borderlands 2, and I was a really big fan of the Borderlands franchise, and now playing Borderlands Pre-Sequel, I'm still playing it. I'm still playing it every day, and I have been for such a long time. Even our QA guys who play it every single day still love playing the game. And once you've used one character and gone down one skill tree, you'll find something even cooler from another character down another skill tree. The slamming doesn't get old ever. And once you start mastering how to fly around the landscape using jetpacks and double jumps and jump pads, you just keep on having more and more fun.
Well, we have a good story. We have fun, low-gravity combat. We have action skills that matter and change how the gameplay plays. We have co-op with all your friends, and a really huge, staggering amount of replayability. If you play through the second playthrough with all 4 characters, you have just hundreds and hundreds of hours of gameplay that people have put into Borderlands games and really, really enjoyed it. The best thing I can say is, if you haven't played it, find someone who has and ask them. They'll tell you. This is just straight fun. Borderlands has been straight fun from the start, and we're going to continue on that path.
Exactly. Now, if you haven't had the chance to try out either Borderlands game, I recommend trying it out. These games are insanely fun and so much over the top, you'll be crying for more. Tony, Matt, thank you so much for joining me today on VGS. I'm really looking forward to the pre-sequel, and just hearing you guys talk about it, I know I won't be disappointed, so thank you.
Thanks. Cheers, David.
Dave Spargala, VGS.